Today I've got some quick, relaxed and easy photography tips that you can use forever. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm bringing you this video indoors today because as you can see, I've got a new member of the family to look after. Another mouth to feed, shall we say. So sorry that the backdrop today is not as interesting as it normally would be, but that doesn't mean that the advice isn't still going to be top tier and crucial. We're still teaching this little guy how to use his camera, but you're getting there, aren't you? You're getting there. You like the 50mm, don't lick the table. When capturing people moving through or into your frame, try to position them in a spot that gives them the most distance to hypothetically move through the rest of the frame. This might require you to act fast when you see a fleeting moment, but having a person moving through the frame is not only much more pleasing to the viewing eye, but also helps to portray the sense of journey in an image. So I've got a bit of an A/B comparison for you here to show you the difference. So this image right here with the guy moving in from the left, you can see the movement in his feet and you can see all the negative space that he's got to move into. So as a viewer, you go to the guy and across the frame like that. Whereas with this next example that I've got for you, this guy is moving out of the frame. So your eye tends to go to the guy and it doesn't really work its way backwards because there's nothing really of interest over that way. He's moving out of the frame and that tends to be where your eye stays rather than going along the journey of the photograph. Now I've got a second one here as well. Now these two aren't terrible because obviously the light is there, therefore you want your subject to be in the light rather than the shadow. But if this image was somehow flipped or reversed and the light was on the other side and the person was moving through, or even if the person was flipped 180 and moving back that way, it would be a much stronger image. So that's just something to look out for when you're taking photos and you are including people, no matter how far away they are or how close they are to your camera. Picking an ideal spot to show the sense of the journey that person is going to take is a powerful way to get better photos. Okay, so next couple of tips are all about getting more images, more bang for your buck when you're out taking photos, and a couple of techniques that I do that allows me to almost double up when I'm out taking photos and get multiple shots from the same thing or from the same place, which works really well if you keep it in the back of your mind and continue practicing it. So the first one is take a photo forwards and backwards. So I've got an example right here of this shot that I took through an alleyway. Obviously you can see outside of the alleyway and the two people walking through. Nice green light go signal there on the traffic light as well, which is awesome. So I shot this real quick. It was real fleeting. I had to be super quick on the shutter to take it. But afterwards, after I got the photo, I decided, right, well, I've got that one now. I'm going to turn around, take a shot backwards, and I took this image right here. And a lot of times, you know, the front and the back shot, they're not going to compare. Oftentimes one side of a place is going to be more interesting than the other side. But if you remember just to turn around and take a photo the other way, wherever you are, whatever your subject is, there's a high chance that you're going to get a second photo that sometimes is better, sometimes isn't, but it's better taking it than not taking it. Here's another example here of this old farm building, animal shelter type thing at the side of the road. I took a photo this way, which is nice. It's nice and bright because that's what the conditions were looking like, shooting in that direction. I then walked past it and took a photo backwards, and because shooting backwards was darker, I then get a completely different shot. This almost doesn't even look like the same building because there's a big door on the front on this side. It's completely different. There's not as much road in it to play with. You know, as I say, the sky was different shooting back that way. So you get two very different images. It's not always going to work, but it is a good way to get more bang for your buck. So moving on from that one, but on the same lines, this is something I spoke about in a video a few months ago, but I find it's really valuable and it was buried quite deep inside a photography on location video. So I wanted to mention it again, but it is searching for photos within the photo that you've just taken. So basically what you want to do is normally when we take photos, we tend to start with like quite a wide scene or quite a powerful scene. So if you take that and you're happy with it, take a look at that image or take a look at what you're looking at in front of you in the real world and think, if I was to zoom in into that frame and pick another photo out of the one I've just taken, is that going to make a good image? So I've got an example here, beach shot here. I've got this black sand down here with these sort of goldy textures and stones and stuff. And then after I took this shot, I zoomed in and got a couple of detail shots of that texture on the floor. And then next example, we've got this petrol station here that I've took a wide establishing shot of, which is pretty much including everything that I'd wanted to include. It's got the sky, it's got the road, it's got a little bit of the surrounding area, it's got the fuel sign there, and of course the petrol station. So then I look at that, zoom right in to the left hand side of the frame, and we get this shot here of the fuel sign and the door to the petrol station, which I think is really nice and sits really nice alongside that first establishing shot. We can then move across into the middle of that big frame and get this one of the petrol tanks or the filling tanks or whatever the real name for them are. And you can do this as many times as you want, just keep moving along your frame and pick details out. And then one more example, we've got a wide image here of this derelict building that's been coloured and graffitied and stuff like that, which I took, and then we punch in and get more direct, and we end up with this shot here. So these are just two very powerful techniques that I use when I'm out. One, to stay conscious of what's around me and how many photos I can take, and two, just to try and get a little bit more for my money, you know what I mean? It's always nice to come back with more photos than just that one shot of a place, so give it a go. Alright, let's talk about balance and spacing, because this is something that you want to get really good at in order to get images that are really pleasing to look at for the viewer without them really even knowing that it's part of your photography process, because it's one of those things where it's like, if it's done well, it's not noticed because it just works. Let's jump into a couple of examples to make this more clear. So this image on screen right here, we've got these blue railings going across, right? And when I shot this, intentionally dipped up a bit in order, wait, did I dip up or down? I don't know. But in order to not have this blue railing here cross over the top of these wheels on the beach, because when I was framing it up, that looked really messy, confusing, and just looked a bit rubbish if I was doing that. So I either took a step back, moved up or down in order for that not to cross over and overall make a much tidier frame. Going back to this example that I shown earlier in the video as well, I specifically waited for this guy walking along the road, to be in line with this ramp that's behind him here, because that's a super bright portion of the image and he's a silhouette. So in order for him to stand out the most, I've waited for him to come into an area that's going to best showcase this guy. So take this shot here of these two people sat on the edge of the lake. As you can see, just in front of them there's that sort of seating area that is probably part of a cafe or something, but because their heads are going up and into that, it makes the frame really messy. There's also a boat behind that as well, which makes it even more confusing. It's not exactly that pleasing to look at, but what I did was take a step back and to the left a bit, round the corner, and then we get this example here, which is much cleaner. You get the two people, there's nothing impeding with them. Unfortunately, that little bit of seating area there is still in the shot because I couldn't really get rid of that, but the boat is no longer overlapping with the seating area, the people are no longer overlapping with the seating area, and it's just all a lot nicer, a lot cleaner, and a lot better spaced out. Next example here, these pillars here that are behind the car on the building, none of them, if you look, are overlapping with the doorways. The doorways are actually a beautiful feature, but the fact that the pillars aren't overlapping the doors, I think helps it to feel like nice and spacious, not cluttered, not messy. And it's just these little micro movements when you're out taking photos that make the biggest difference. Balance and spacing can also be achieved by how much you actually want to include in your image. So let's pull up this example here where I've included a lot of the surrounding area. You can see the sky, the top of the waterfall coming down, and a lot of the environment. And Jess looks quite small and insignificant inside of this frame because she's almost lost in the landscape. She's almost blending in with the rocks. It's not the worst photo in the world, but we can do something like this instead, where we punch in, we get Jess on the lower end of the frame, so we're still getting that powerful force of water coming down, and it's just a lot nicer. We've cut out all the noise, all the distractions, all the parts of the image that aren't really adding much to the frame, and we just get the point of the photo that is Jess being nice and zen at this waterfall. This also tends to make or break images when you've got people moving through frames as well. I like talking about people moving through frames a lot, don't I? But let's bring up this example here. As you can see, I've shot these two walking their dog from directly at the side of them, directly at the front of them. You know what I mean? I've shot them straight on anyway, and the man overlaps the woman. The man's legs are in front of the dog and all that kind of stuff, and it just looks all a little bit messy, not that great. Whereas if we take a step back and use a side angle to shoot an image, here you have an example of how you can nicely space two people out walking along. None of their body is crossing over. Obviously they're holding hands, but the legs aren't crossing over with each other, the hands on. It's always something you need to be looking out for when you're taking photos, just waiting for that optimum moment to press the shutter so that it all looks really nice. There was a good example in the video I made last week, actually. I'm gonna pull that up real quick. It was quite slow when they were walking along the beach. I had loads of chances to just keep pressing the shutter, but I waited for an optimum moment where nobody was overlapping anybody, even the dogs aren't overlapping each other. And it just makes that image so much more cleaner, so much more spacious, and not messy and confusing to the viewer. Okay, one more example for balance, positioning and spacing and all that good stuff. When I shot this image here, I noticed you've got this break in the reeds, almost looks like a little footpath is leading through there. So what I did is position that pylon, that triangle, that pyramid thing, I don't know what it's called. I positioned that to line up with the start or entrance, should we call it, of that little path or break through there. And it just makes it feel really balanced, really spacious and intentional. That's the word I'm looking for, intentional. Spending a little bit more time on where you're positioning things and how much space is on either side and at the top and the bottom. And all of that is what makes photographs feel intentional. Right, that's going to be it from me in this one. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a quick one. It was quite chaotic, but I'm doing my best still to film videos while I'm looking after my new son, aka puppy. So I'll hopefully see you again soon outside taking photos next time. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Drop a comment down below if you enjoyed it or you want to chat. I respond to all the comments and all of that. So if you want to chat, that's the best place to reach me. Speak to you again soon. Thanks so much for watching. See ya. Oh, and go check out this video next, which is all about me having a bad photography day, but embracing failure and showing photos are rubbish.